Right, there it is.
So, are we live yet? Okay. Welcome. I can see people joining us as we're talking here. We've the count is going up, and I'll just wait a minute or so so everyone has a chance to join in. You already have one shot. I guess that's Elizabeth. Anyway, it is April the 9th, I believe. It's 1 o'clock here in Toronto, and welcome to Change for Good. And I was just thinking before we started that I think for me, it's been the fourth week, almost the end of the fourth week I've worked at home. And as I'm sure many of you have as well. And we've started this series called Change for Good because COVID-19 is obviously a crisis, but we also believe it's an opportunity for positive change. And that is what Change for Good is all about, and that's why we're here today. So every week, I have the incredible opportunity to speak with a social change leader about how COVID-19 is affecting their organizations and what they're doing differently to not only to solve COVID-19, but also to improve what they do in other ways. And today I have the very great pleasure of speaking with Valerie Mcmurtry, who's the president and CEO of the Children's Aid Foundation of Canada. Welcome, Valerie.
Thank you very much.
And Valerie is a leading advocate for children and youth at risk, and is also one of Canada's most successful fundraisers. And I had the great opportunity to speak with Valerie a couple of days ago. And one of the things that I think is particularly interesting and sad really is that COVID-19 is actually putting more children and youth at risk than they even were before. And I know you're going to learn a lot from Valerie about the situation, how she's addressing it and what she's doing differently in her organization at Children's Aid. Valerie and I are going to have a conversation about 20 minutes, and then you all will have an opportunity to ask Valerie questions directly. But don't wait until the end to submit your questions. Submit them now, just so it'll be smooth at the end. Anyway, again, welcome, Valerie, and just to kick things off, I know you and I were speaking earlier this week, and I think we both shared the same view that during what is a really quite difficult time, there's also been some very beautiful things happening. And I've had the experience here over the last weeks at home of having some things happen with our family that I think might not have happened otherwise. Anyway, I thought just to start off, maybe you'd share a little bit of what your own personal experience has been over the last few weeks.
Oh, for sure. Thanks very much, Paul. Well, like everyone, it's been an adjustment working at home, and I think I'm smiling because in terms of something quite positive, my husband and I would not be accused of being the most technologically advanced people in the world. And of course, always on our long to-do list of things at home is to improve the use and the capacity of all of our technology. So a little bit by necessity as it comes to getting your devices to connect to your home printer, etc. And a little bit because we just really wanted to have a better sound system in our house. We've been able to figure it out. Nobody sent me questions because it's still been completely blind luck, but we actually do have our speakers synchronized and our printers do speak to our devices. That much we've got. So that's, but kind of, I guess, a bit related is we've done that on our own because we have five millennials, our children. Between us, 5 children, and like many parents of millennials with who had them living in their basement for a long time, we really kind of we're in that group of parents wondering when are they ever going to leave. And sure enough, we had the last one move out the week before the pandemic and the lockdown began. And so we are now in now it seems like a very empty house except for our well cared for dog. And we really are pleased that all of our kids are living independently. They're all here in the city of Toronto, and they're all doing fine. But we really didn't want them to have to leave this way and not be able to come back to us at any time. So that's been really hard for us, I think. We really miss them. But that's the hardship that we all feel, being separated from our loved ones physically like this right now.
For sure. I feel the same way. Thinking back to our conversation earlier this week, one of the things that I hadn't thought about, honestly, until I spoke with you, I know you're leading the Children's Aid Foundation of Canada, and the mission is helping children and youth at risk. But as you said, the situation today is even worse than it was. And I'd love you to just share, what you're seeing kind of on the ground, or with the organizations you're working with, or with the children themselves.
Sure, yeah. Well, I think for sure my foundation is working in the child welfare space with children and families and young people who've left the child welfare system, have aged out, if you will. And they are already generally the most vulnerable community, families in communities. And so I've had a lot of conversations. Our foundation fundraises, for sure. Our core business is fundraising. But as a national organization, more and more, we're working on the ground with agencies all over the country, child and youth serving organizations. We have a network of over 100 agencies we fund or have some form of partnership with. And we're hearing from that front line a lot of really worrisome things. I'll share with you, for example, because children are now at home, they're out of their schools and they're out of their daycares, there's a great concern across the entire child welfare system about how those children are doing with fewer eyes on them, not enough eyes on children. And we know that our frontline child protection agencies are receiving a lot less calls. Call volumes have been down here in Toronto by as much as 50%. And so that's concerning for everybody in terms of, just wanting to know what's going on with these children. And it's concerning for the agency to figure out, the protection agencies to figure out how to do their work in this new world. It's just so much more difficult. So there's lots of worry about that piece. The other end, so when I looked in on it at the week, like you, Paul, our team went off site and went to remote work environment 4 weeks ago. And when I looked in on it, apart from the business continuity work, which is very important to make sure our staff were safe and set up to work and so on, we started thinking right away about how we can participate in this and how we can contribute. What can we do to help in the face of this crisis against the populations that we're concerned with? And we work across the whole child welfare spectrum, as I just mentioned. But the area of the population of young people who have aged out of government care across Canada at the age of 18, in pretty much every province, they're considered adults and they have to start living independently. And our foundation has been doing a lot of things over many years to try and increase supports for those young people who really have nobody backing them. So we saw an opportunity, and I can talk more about it. I don't want to monopolize this as a conversation between us, but I'd be pleased to tell you more about the things we've done to jump in, to be mobilizing, even while we're reeling like every charity and trying to figure out, what the impacts will be on our fundraising program and our gala and all of those things. We've seen an opportunity to galvanize and focus our energy and interest on putting supports in place for youth who age out of the system.
Well, it makes me think about situation. You mentioned the frontline organizations, and you've got so much social change happens in person. I think you've got and in a situation now where that can't happen in the same way. So it'd just be great to hear a little bit more about how your organization and its partners are negotiating that.
Well, that's something we're trying to catch up on. We are not on that front line. We're not directly in the work of the child protection the way that social workers inside the government funded agencies are. But we know, again, from the stories we're gaining, that they're really in crisis. They're trying very hard to meet the very intense demands of families who need their help. And it's everything from emergency supplies like diapers and baby formula and personal safety equipment and so on, but they're also really trying to think about, as each week's going by, how they do their work from these from a safe environment. They still are going out on calls. They have to. They're an essential service that way. But they're also thinking through the ways that technology can help them do their work better, to keep families connected, to keep in touch with the children and families they're serving. And I think there's a lot of scrambling to get that in place. They're not equipped really to work through technology such as this.
Now, the other thing that you mentioned is fundraising, and so you can't just always, you have events, you have different things, and you have years of experience in fundraising, of course, at a time when I'm sure every charitable organization is scrambling for funds.
Yeah.
Never. Everyone's got their own issues in different ways, what you described. But how are you leaning into that today? And like, what are you doing differently to engage donors today in this, in an issue that I think maybe is not as I don't know if it's fair to say, but my impression is an issue that maybe is not as well known or supported as much as it should be anyway.
Yeah.
What are you seeing? What are you doing differently? And what could you share?
Well, lots of things. So first of all, I think, and I'm hearing this across our whole sector and the fundraising leaders I'm in touch with, I know that we're all saying to our teams, this is a time to reach out to our donors. It's not a time to recoil and kind of be absent. So reaching out and having conversations and communicating directly with especially our closest stakeholders and donors and longtime allies. That's a kind of, in my mind, like it's job one. But a bit more to think about for us as leaders is how we're doing that and what our message is. And so in our case, I'm really, really proud of our team and how quickly we mobilized into direct service to these aged out youth. So we put together in a very short period of time a $5 million campaign. We're trying to put money into a fund that our fundraising team is working on that part very hard. And on our program and grants team side, they've also mobilized to be in a position to be a direct distributor. We're going to be able to put financial support out starting this afternoon into the bank accounts of youth who've aged out for emergency funds. So we put together a very specific and I believe very relevant appeal that we can take out, and it's been a ton of work. We've really worked around the clock to put a bunch of things in place to be ready for this and to get out and start fundraising. That is a lot different than many other charities who I think are, I'm not going to say that we don't all have relevance, but we may have relevance in a time. And so I don't want to single. So I want to say I also think it's possible to adapt, which is kind of what we've just done. We're not really in direct service to youth generally, but on this we can move for a bunch of reasons. But I think that some charities, I caught in the news this week that the Toronto Public Libraries, for example, have adapted to be relevant in the face of this crisis by becoming partners with I think Second Harvest and some food distributors. And I think, great, like there's a charity that you wouldn't think of as the front line of relevance to the community in this first stage of the crises, if you will. But they've pivoted and put themselves into play, and I think that's super smart.
Yeah, I saw that. Amazing. The other thing that I was thinking about is, as a leader of your organization, how has that changed how you see yourself as a leader or your role or any specific activities, or what are you doing differently to lead the organization at a time when it's very different than it was, and the technology and the whole context is different? People must be having very different expectations of you.
Yeah.
What could you share about how you're thinking about leadership?
Well, the point I was just making, I guess, about pivoting is an important one, and I didn't take very long to see the opportunity for our organization to move to be. I'm not talking about the physical relocation of our team. I have a really great operations team who helped us get that done. I'm talking about having a purpose and a focus in our work. And that, I think, has been probably the most important thing I've done for our team in my leadership capacity, because even while we all are dealing with this pandemic personally, and we all are carrying our anxieties and stress, as it comes, and stress about our jobs, like what is our job about? I think in this first few weeks, we've given focus to the work we're in, and as I said, making it relevant to the actual pandemic we're facing. And so I've been a spokesperson for that. I've been articulating that. I've been asking the team to come together. We have team leads who are now clear on their role in bringing this strategy to life. And I would say I've become a public spokesperson for these issues as much as I'm able to as well. And starting to navigate in some new channels, like government channels, which we haven't really traditionally had much strength in.
And what's your, of course, there's been a lot of conversation about the government's role in supporting businesses, but part of that includes charities as well. What are you seeing there? Is it in terms of the support from the government or your ability to engage them at this time?
Yeah, well, we again, we've not. I don't have someone on my team who is full-time in government relations or government advocacy or anything like that. But we definitely have jumped in, feeling that we have a case to make to different levels of government about the most vulnerable children and families in their community. And we've had some really great, I'm going to say short-term and fingers crossed, some great feedback. And it's been very encouraging. It's been an area I've spent a lot of my own time on in the past couple of weeks. And I'm impressed at the pace, I will say, of decision making and the openness for different voices to come together to make a case for change and what's needed in the community. Like that, I think that's been pretty phenomenal. I've seen some amazing acts of leadership across, and I'm sure we all have, the political spectrum for sure.
Thank you. The other thing I was thinking about, in our conversation earlier this week, is you said to me that you've got a kind of running checklist you're making about different things.
Yeah, lessons learned already. Yeah.
And I think for the people who are listening, and by the way, we have people here listening from different parts of the world as well. I'm 100% sure that they would love to hear some of those ideas that you've kind of noted for yourself that might be useful to them.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks. I mean, I have thought, because it just hits me at different times of my day. Wow, like this is an insight into what's going on for us as an organization, for me as a leader. I think I've said it maybe enough times by now, but be relevant or be on the sidelines is definitely one, right? Like that to me, we're going to make noise in the channel as a charity if we're advocating for things that aren't relevant to where we are in this crisis right now, and it's just distracting. So I think it's important that we have our messages be tied to, if we have something important to say that is relevant to the current, that's great. But otherwise, maybe we should just be silent. That's one area. I think that we've seen this comment. I've seen it in lots of leadership discussions in the past few weeks, but excellence can be the enemy of good. And so we moved really quickly to get into this position to be distributing by direct deposit money into youth accounts. That took a lot of work on our team. And believe me, I have a great team, and they are, many of them, perfectionists. Like they just want to have everything dotted and T's crossed, etc. And I'm thinking, no, this is a crisis. Like we're going to have to take some risks. We're going to have to jump in and go for it. And we're going to have to mend it as we go, but let's just go.
Love it.
Sorry,
It's great. I love it. Keep going.
I want to just comment on my team too, because they are amazing, and I've said this to I think most of them in the course of things over the past couple of weeks. It really, I've been in this role for 7 years. Had this pandemic happened in my first year or two, I don't think there's any way we could have mobilized the way we have. I just wouldn't have been ready. I don't know enough about the child welfare system and the issues in play, and we have now a really strong team of leaders who've been together, who have great experience. We have trust. That whole stage of your team's life is an important consideration. That whole idea of forming, storming, norming, and performing. I'm proud to say I think my team is, we're at that performing stage, but you can't force that. It has to kind of be there, and you can try and lead it there, I guess. But that's just, in my mind, kind of fortunate timing for us as an organization right now and where we are.
Well, thank you. The other thing which, of course, everyone's thinking about is, the expression, the new normal, of course. And so this is all going to be over, hopefully sooner rather than later. But and all the things that you've been doing and thinking about, and these ideas you've shared, what does that look like at the Children's Aid Foundation when this is over for you? I mean, is it going back to the way you were? What's different?
So many things. I mean, so many things. You could talk just about our fundraising gala. Will we ever have one again? Where are we going to have one this year? Like those things, just the functional things may really be different. But I do think in terms of where we are as an organization, there are many positive things that are going to come out of this. I think just the chance to work in these mobile settings and show that it works is organizationally a very good thing for us. We're proving that we can be really productive while working remotely. And I think we didn't think we were going to be able to do that a year ago, like we've been asked, and we weren't ready. I think one of the things that I've been impressed with is how fast we've been able to move on things. And I think of that at the government level. I think of that with the work we're doing within our foundation. And I think there's proof in that while you obviously value good structure and process and whatnot, the decision-making can be really condensed to make good decisions and move on things. And, back to that perfection thing, I think that people can be more productive in shorter periods of time. That could be a very positive thing. In terms of the overall sector and fundraising, I've been in the sector a long time. I did lead an organization out during the recession in 2008. There's no doubt that it had its toll on fundraising for several years. I think some things slow down. Sometimes donors take longer to pay. But there's incredible amounts of generosity in the donor community. And we've been pretty blown away by so many of our donors putting up their hands to do things right now in the crisis. And I know that they'll be there with us as we move through it.
Well, I think that's incredible. I think that's where we want to kind of all of us listening here lean into that and say, I think that there's actually maybe all in a place where doing what we do, those people who were committed and involved in social change, the context for that is actually more charged and important than ever, I think, and donors are looking at that differently too. We don't have that much time left, so I just want to jump to a couple of questions that have been sent in.
Awesome.
Yeah, so someone asked to you, what sort of support can volunteers give from their homes?
Oh, so interesting. Yeah, we're being asked that quite a bit, and in this setting of social distancing, it is hard to get out. And we know our youth need contact with people. Like that social isolation is possibly the worst thing for youth who are already feeling socially marginalized. So we're working on trying to find ways to bring mental health supports and online counseling to those young people. In terms of our work, I'm going to say the number one thing you can do is help us get our messages out. So an example of how fast and how great our team has been at mobilizing. They went to an area of fundraising we've never been super strong in or very developed in is peer-to-peer online fundraising pages. And thanks to the leadership of an amazing guy on my board who has a background in that stuff, he helped get our team ready. And so we're out in peer-to-peer fundraising for this emergency appeal, and we're trying to get people to sign up with teams. And we have people on our team who are able to help. So that's fundraising. You knew my answer had to always be, it has to come to fundraising, right? That's about fundraising.
There's another fundraising question for you that someone sent in. Sanjeev sent this in. So she said, "Hi, Valerie. Felt inspired by your approach to lead for good. It would be great if you could share some fundraising experiences which made your and your team's day." I guess that means today. Is there something you?
I have so many. They're really. I do. What's happened today? Well, a long-time funder who holds a big endowment with us contacted us and wanted to jump in on making a big leadership gift and made that a challenge grant. So we have that. That's part of our community appeal right now, and we have. This is a woman. She and her family are really actively tapping into their network beyond their own personal generosity. So there's a great example.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
Someone has also asked another question. What was one of the main dilemmas that your team had, and how did you or they tackle that?
In this crisis? So we've had a few already, and I'll point to. I've already explained how we jumped in and said, let's just, we didn't, there was no science really to how we decided to have a $5 million campaign. We just jumped in and started, and we've got some money against that already, you know, but this was last Wednesday, we had a few $100,000 already aggregated that we knew we could start distributing. And meanwhile, our grants team was getting ready to open the portal for youth to actually come and apply. And so there was a bit of a moment in my own head in the discussion with our team on, do we need to wait until we get our 5 million raised, which was going to take us some time, before we start distributing money to the youth? And we made the decision, no, we got money, this is urgent, let's get going. So we went ahead and opened up the portal, and in less than 48 hours we had 1,900 applications. And so for us, that was fortifying in some respects to remind us, yes, indeed, we're in the right thing, because we know these young kids really are looking for help, and they're looking to us for help. And so we were excited about that, but we knew our fundraising was not at capacity yet to meet. Each youth is able to apply for up to $1,000. So there was a moment there where I really struggled as a leader. Did I do the right thing? Because we don't want to be piling up applications from kids who are going to feel, if we don't meet our big financial target, who are going to feel let down. So that weighs on me for sure. Makes me work harder on the fundraising side for sure too.
Thanks for sharing. So we're almost out of time, but there's a couple of questions that are related. So I'll just try and ask them at the same time, which I think is probably the most important thing, actually. We've had one person ask, how do youth get information about your organization? And the other question is, as someone has said, Komal said, as a life coach and mother of two, passionate about interests of children, how can I best contribute to your foundation's work? And I think that main question is, how do people get involved? Like you've talked about, and we could share this perhaps with everyone afterwards, if you were able to share it with us, like how do people actually get directly involved if they want to give money, if they want to give time to the Children's Aid Foundation?
Yeah.
Do that.
Well, for sure, I will say money is the most, and messaging is the most direct. If you have resources to share with us, I would send them to us. Like we're aggregating a lot of information that we do distribute directly to youth, just to answer that question. When we made this decision to jump in on a direct service model for getting money to young people, it came up because we realized, between some other major programs we've run for many years, we have a national scholarship program that funds youth receiving funding for post-secondary studies, and we also run in partnership with TELUS, the TELUS Mobility for Good program, which allowed youth to get free phone and data plans through an application portal we were administering. So that alone put us in touch with 6,000 young people. So that's the channel, that's the direct channel that we're communicating out through right now. And while we're focused on putting the fund in place, we're also aggregating information, and we need help connecting youth to real resources. So you can send any information you have to us, so we can distribute that.
And we'll distribute all this to all the participants and on LinkedIn and everything else. We'll try and create as much awareness as we can, of course. Well, we're out of time, sadly. I was saying to Valerie before this, so quickly it does. Yeah. First of all, Valerie, thank you so much for your time and your perspective. It's been so helpful as always. I also want to thank our team at Impact, who remain 100% committed to the cause of social change and helping solve social problems. And finally, I just wanted to let everyone know that next week at this time, we'll have the pleasure of speaking with Daniele Zanotti, who's the CEO of the United Way of Greater Toronto, which I believe is one of the largest United Ways in the world. And so sign up for that. Right after this, we'll send information. And you'll also be able to get a copy or view this conversation with Valerie and share it with anyone that would be interested. So we appreciate Valerie, first and foremost.
You too.
We appreciate everyone participating today, and we look forward to seeing you next week, and stay safe. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks
Bye.
for having me today. Stay safe.